How's it going, everybody? This is Dine here, and today I have a weapons showcase for all the weapons you get in Ashes of Ariandel. Starting off, we're going to start with Valorheart. It is probably one of my absolute favorite weapons from the DLC. Let's see, let's get into it. It is a dexterity scale weapon. We need 12 strength, 12 dex to wield. It has a D in strength and a C in dex. And basically, it's a dual weapon. Don't get me wrong here. It's not a sword and a shield difference here. On its own, it's just a gladius with a typical straight sword moveset. Got your typical rolling attacks, R1s and R2s, and got your running attacks. And then dual wielded, you have this really cool combo between hitting with a gladius and a shield bash. That's all of its R1 combo. Pretty cool move set, I would say. And then it's R2s. You just kind of got the longsword move set. Nothing too crazy going on there. You got the rolling R1, the rolling R2, then you got the running R1. So pretty much just a longsword move set, straight sword, and then you guard with your left like a shield. The cool part about this though is the battle art. The battle art, you take up a stance. Pretty cool. It kind of reminds me of like a Greek sword fighter stance, and you guard with your shield while in the stance. Now, when you R1 while in the stance, you do a charge. Pretty, standard like sword charge battle art. And then with the R2, this is the cool part I think, is like you get this really cool shield bash. Oh, I ran out of FP. Let's see here. Yeah, you have this shield bash. It makes a lion come out, and it actually does pretty decent damage to your opponent. I enjoy it quite a bit. It actually might be one of my favorites in the whole DLC. It might be my favorite. I'm not actually quite sure yet. Also, a cool thing to note about the running R2 right here is you actually run in an attack with the shield up. And that's amazing for like when your opponent is attacking or getting ready to attack you and you just run up on them and they try to attack you, you'll actually block their attack, which the shield actually has pretty decent damage reduction. It does 60, but also has 50 stability. But it seems to at least definitely halves the damage. And then you follow up with a counter attack. So it's kind of cool to like get over your opponent's attack, block it, and counter them. Pretty versatile weapon. I see it used a lot right now in the DLC arena, and I have a hard time fighting against it. It has a strange amount of phantom range too. It kind of has like it's about as long as like a longsword in terms of phantom range. Moving on, we have the Onyx Blade. Now this is a really cool weapon. It is a great sword from the DLC. It has a D and a D in strength and dex and a C in intelligence and faith. Requires 14 strength, 12 dex, 15 intelligence, and 15 faith. It deals physical and dark damage, which is pretty awesome. You don't see a whole lot of that going on. And for its moveset, with the R1s, you got a typical greatsword moveset as well as the R2s. You got a thrust, which is really cool. I like having a thrust on a sword. And then you have your running attacks, which is the awesome greatsword running attack. It just clears the area. That's your running R2. Then you have your rolling R1, rolling R2, and then two-handed. You have your R1s, or standard greatsword moveset. Then you have your R2s, which is a poke, followed by a slash. And then your rolling R1. And then you have a rolling R2. I'm sure these can be chained pretty efficiently if you figure out how to do it. I haven't used this sword too much yet on my own. Your running attacks, same as the one-handed. And then your R2 is the same as well for running. Now what makes this weapon really cool is its battle art, which is a dark buff, and it's very awesome looking. I love it. And a great thing about the weapon art is someone's close to you and you buff, that actually deals damage to them right there, that slash. So it's actually pretty cool that you can fend off an opponent's attack with it and then also get a dark buff and just waylay on them. It's a ridiculous weapon, and it does significant damage with a dark buff. Next, we have the Follower Saber, which actually aesthetically is probably one of my favorite weapons. It's just like a typical like scimitar curved sword type weapon, and it's one-handed attack. It's R1s. I like it. It's very swift, very fast. It has decent range. Damage is pretty okay. I mean, it's got a D&D. It's a quality weapon. 9 strength, 14 dex to wield. And it's R2s. I kind of like the delay on it. I could see that throwing your opponent off quite a bit. You get your rolling R1s. Rolling R2. Then you have a running R1. Typical curved sword running R1 right there. Your running R2, which is your jumping attack. And then two-handed, you have, very fast curved sword moveset. Then you have your R2s, which I really like the look of these. These look cool. I really like them. And you have a rolling R1, typical for a curved sword, rolling R2. And your running R1, running R2. Then your battle art, which is I really love. That would be it's a great roll catching tool, and also a great interruption tool if your opponent's trying to attack. I don't know if you can chain it. Yes, you can. You can chain it into the R2. Deal that third crushing blow. Let's see. Next we have Crow Quills. Now this is probably the second most seen weapon I'm seeing right now in the arena for PvP. And for a very good reason. It's extremely versatile. Basically what it is a rapier, and while two-handed, it's a dual weapon with projectile weapons in the left hand. Very versatile, as I'll show you why. One-handed, it's a standard rapier. Not too fancy. It's your R1s, this is your R2s, your pokies. And then you're running an R1, what you would expect from a rapier, really. Rolling attacks. And then while you're dual wielding, rolling attack, rolling attack. It's actually exactly the same as using it one-handed with a rapier, except you can use the claw, or you can use the projectile weapons interlocked with your fingers as a claw type weapon that also goes with a rapier, which I'm sure can be comboed into R1s too, to deal some really good damage. I don't know. I haven't tried using it that much. I'm not a big rapier fan, to be honest, but this is definitely a very cool weapon. And then the L2 is where it really shines because it works as a projectile weapon. You throw the projectiles at your opponent. It's really great for creating distance or keeping your opponents back and, catching runners. People are trying to play defensively. So it's very versatile for any sort of range of combat. Next, we have the Millwood Battle Axe. Now this one might be my new favorite battle axe. I'm not a big fan of battle axes, but this one is amazing in itself. It's got the standard battle axe moveset. It's pretty quick. There's your R1s, and then you have your R2s, which don't vary too much. Rolling attacks. Then you got your running attack. I really love the jump for battle axes. Great roll catch tool. And then your two-handed is essentially the same as any other battle axe. Kind of got that clunky feel to it. Running attacks. Rolling. And then the battle art is essentially Warcry, but you start with like a rush, which staggers your opponent when you run into them, and you end it by going into Warcry. Now that is amazing. If you need to rush your opponent, it kind of throws them off and even breaks their guard a bit. Follow up with an attack. It's awesome. I have a hard time dealing with people who use that on me. You can follow up with R2s, and it just destroys. I have a hard time combating people that know how to use the battle art in the right timing. Next we have Earthtaker, which might be one of my, I don't know, it might be my favorite weapon from the DLC. I'm not quite sure. It's a battle axe. It is freaking awesome. It requires 24 strength and 15 faith. It has a C in strength and a D scaling in faith. And its R1s are pretty typical great axe. There's your R2s. This isn't very too much on the R1s at all. I mean, great axes aren't known for being flashy. They're just known for getting the job done. Your running attacks are as follows: R1, R2, rolling attacks, R1. It's such a good roll catch. R2. Same kind of, but with a delay. And your two-handed attacks, your R1s, R2s. And then you have your rolling attack, R1, rolling attack, R2. Now what really shines about this weapon is its battle art, and I'll show you why. Punch it in the ground, and you cause an earthquake, which sends your opponent flying up into the air if they get hit by it. It has a pretty awesome amount of range to it. If your opponent gets close to you, like, there's not much they can do. And that's what it looks like when you're out of FP. I remember fighting the enemy who gives you this axe in the DLC, and the whole ground in the area shakes, and I'm just like, what is going on? And I found out it was that guy, and it was a really awesome experience. What do we have next here for you guys? We have the Quake Stone Hammer, which I actually don't have enough strength to wield, but it will do. It is a great hammer, which is pure strength, requires 40 strength, and has a C scaling in. And all these weapons are currently not upgraded except for Valorheart. It's the only one I've been using a little bit of. It's a typical great hammer. You know, it's got your great hammer R1s, the kind of circular swing, and then your R2s. Essentially, they're the same. One probably does more damage. The R2s probably do a bit more damage. The rolling R1, which is that awesome great hammer R1. The main reason why I use the Cathedral Knight Greatsword is that it has some great hammer moves. It's rolling R2. And then, yeah. Let's see, and then you're running R1. I was not running there, sorry about that. And then you're running R2, which is your jumping attack. And then two-handed, like most great hammers. And then your R2s. And then you have your rolling R1. Typical great hammer rolling R1. I love it a lot. And then your rolling R2. And your running attacks. R1. And then R2. I love that swing. The jumping attack world catch right there. If you time it just right, you can catch somebody running with it or rolling with it. And it's battle art, which is a kind of a throwback from the giant stone knights in Dark Souls 1's DLC. You plunge it into the ground, then hit R2 to bring the earth up, kind of like what those giants did to you in the first DLC of Dark Souls, or Dark Souls 1's DLC, and it sends your opponent flying. There's not much they can do, and it usually throws them off. Like usually they'll get away from the first part, then they don't expect that part. It's really great. I've been hit by it a few times, and it just destroys. Next we have the Follower Javelin, which is a crowd favorite right now. Basically it's a short spear, and it has a very regular spear moveset. Those are the R2s, and these are the R1s. You know, rolling attack, got that downward slash like most spears have, and your rolling R2, which is a poke. Running R1, which is a running poke. Running R2, which is kind of like just the jumping poke. Got a lot of pokes. Pokes for days. Those are your two-handed R1s. And you got your two-handed R2s, which is kind of the same, but with a charge to it. And your rollings. I love the upward slash. The upward slash on spears, though. I find it very useful. Rolling R2. Another pokey poke. And then the battle art, which is what makes it so great, is that it is also a projectile weapon you can throw at your opponents. And it works very well. It has very good aim, very decent tracking. It's dodgeable, but it has a really awesome arc and does a decent amount of damage. Might actually start using that on the regular. Next we have the final boss's weapon. We have Fridas' Great Scythe. Now this is an amazing weapon. I see this being used in the arena more than anything else. and for good reasons. It has an E in Strength, a B in Dex, a C in Intelligence, and an E in Face, so it requires a lot of different stats to wield. Deals physical and magic split damage, and also deals 35 points of frost damage. And that is amazing. It will frostbite your opponents on contact. Not immediately, but it will build it up and slow down their stamina. And it is a fairly quick weapon, even for a Scythe. It's R1s. And then it's R2s. I remember Scythes getting a buff in the patch notes for the new patch that I read, too. So it does make it a bit more effective. Then you got your rolling attack, R1. Your rolling, R2. Very wide range on that. Now you have your running, R1. Great range and roll catcher. Running R2, which is your jumping attack. And then two-handed. This thing just combos like a beast with a two-handed R1. I love that. I love the wide sweeps. And you have your R2s, which are like most great scythes. You have your running R1. Your running R2. Another, sweep. Your rolling R1. And your rolling R2. Very great scythe moveset. Now what makes it amazing is its battle arts, which you take a stance where you pull out your other scythe with an illusory blade. And you take up a really cool stance. It's actually pretty cool to edgelord slow walk with, if you're into that. Now what's great about it is while in stance, your R1s are just a pain train. It is a combo from hell. Look at that. Like, you can catch people in it and just give them a world of pain. There's not much they can do. I've been caught up in it so many times. I have run into scythe users all over the place just wielding this weapon in the arena. And then another great thing that makes it so utility is the R2 from the stance. You actually sweep the ground with frost, which explodes. So if your opponent is over the frost, they actually take frost damage and build up frostbite and get damage from the explosion, which has a very good chance of incurring frostbite on them. Very utility weapon. You can catch them as they're advancing on you with the frost and then just combo into the R1s. Maybe even get them in the explosion at the same time if you time it right and have the right spacing. Next we have the Crow Talons. This is a pretty cool weapon. It's a new claw weapon, and it has 33 bleed damage with an E in strength and a C in dex. Requires 6 strength and 19 dex to wield. And it's R1s one-handed. And then your R2s. Pretty interesting. Got your rolling R1. Not too much range on that. Rolling R2. And you get your running R1. Pretty awesome, like swiping animation. And you got your running R2. And then two-handed, it's actually a dual weapon. You have dual claws. And you have your R1s. Pretty decent speed on those. And you have R2. It's a wide sweeping swipe. And then you have your running R1. Running R2. And you have a rolling R1, which is actually a double roll. You could use that to roll catch for days. They won't see that coming at all. I love that. Or even like throw them for the triple. Then you have a rolling R2, which is kind of just like a delayed double slice. And then you have your L1s, which combo kind of like a Cestus, I would say. I haven't used these very much, but it definitely seems like a Cestus. You might even be able to do the L1, R2, L1, L1 combo, you know, yeah, it seems to be combo pretty well. I haven't actually used these yet against anybody, so I'm not quite sure how effective it is. But then you have this battle art that is just kind of ridiculous. You just press L2 once and you get this. Yeah, one button. It doesn't combo really much into anything else that I know of. It does consume a lot of stamina, but for what you get for pressing one button, it's pretty great. Moving on, we have the Pyromancer's Parting Flame, which isn't really much of a weapon. It's a Pyromancy Flame. I'm actually going to have to equip it in the left hand to show you what it does. It's like a normal Pyromancy Flame, except you get 198 fire, or you get fire damage, and 124 spell buff. Requires 15 strength, 13 dex, or not 13 dex, 13 intelligence, and 13 faith, and actually scales with intelligence and faith, making it boost your pyromancy damage. And then the great thing about it is when you kill enemies, you gain these things called death echoes that build up around you. And then its battle art, when you use it, releases the death echoes to actually heal you. I don't have any death echoes, so you can't really see the animation there, but that's what it looks like if you had them, and it actually gives you some healing. So it's actually really great in PvE, or even like in a brawl situation, like an arena. If you need to heal yourself and you only get like one Estus and you've already used it, you can just use that. Pretty cool. It might actually make me want to be a Pyromancer. I might actually have to try out a Pyromancer build. This next one's one of my favorites. It's just a torch. It's called a follower torch. Normal torch, except for it also scales with intelligence and faith, and deals fire damage. Requires 14 strength and then 10 intelligence and faith. And it's got, like a, torch moveset. That's not the interesting part, really, though. The interesting part is the battle art. Battle art, which you can just blow fire at your opponent through it. Isn't that awesome? And since it scales with intelligence and faith for a pyromancer build, this could be another, utility weapon to have, like on your sidearm or something. With the rest of your ridiculous pyromancies, like, the pyromancy flame to heal yourself, the parting flame, and then bust out your normal flame to use combustion, and also have this torch. Heck, you might not even need a normal weapon. And that's all to show. There's only one weapon I didn't get while doing the DLC, and it's the other weapon you get from the main boss soul, which is a flail. And I don't have it yet, but what I do know about it is that it's a faith weapon, and its battle art is like a self-flagellation, kind of like Bloodlust, inflicts damage upon you, but in return you get a great boost to your miracle damage. And that's pretty much it. Alright, that's all for the weapon showcase of Ashes of Ariandel's DLC weapons, and thank you very much. Guys, have a good one, and take it easy, and praise the sun.